So my question to these types of business owners is always, well, how many people are you keeping each month?
Retention is not sexy though. Retention is actually quite hard work.
And in some sense, you're right, it's not sexy. It is just sexier to say I signed up 1,000 people this month and I made all this kind of front end money.
Haley, thank you very much for joining me again. It's good to have you on the podcast. It's very exciting. We had a great session last week, so quite keen to hear what you have to say today.
Yeah, well, thank you as always for having me. I always enjoy our conversations, and I like the opportunity to just get into this stuff because the client success journey and retaining people and seeing how you keep people motivated and going far on their journey is kind of really my jam. So I get quite excited talking about it. I think having a little bit of a walkthrough, if you like, of these kind of 6 key pillars is really important, because when it comes to retention, there's no like one single thing that elevates and maximizes and boosts retention. It's more of an ecosystem, which is why I talk about retention as the internal funnel to your business, because we've all got these kind of front end funnels that are all about marketing and sales and things like that. And the best way I can describe retention is it's more of an ecosystem, and it's that ecosystem really forms an internal funnel that guides clients and customers and collaborators through the journey, where retention, renewal, and long-term collaboration is the natural byproduct, as opposed to do this thing here and people will immediately stay with you forever. So there you go.
Yeah. So and you were saying to me that we were looking at it, but the industry we're in, which is the direct selling, multi-level marketing, network marketing, affiliate marketing type industry, that retention is a real problem. Churn is just like off the charts. And if any organizations out there are having that problem, it's probably the MLM organizations, because they're bringing people in and they're just churning them out as fast as they're bringing them in.
Yeah, I mean, for an MLM business, if it really it lives and dies by its ability to retain clients, customers long term. And so in that sense, yeah, obviously, acquiring new people is obviously going to be an important priority, but actually obsessing over keeping people is probably the biggest opportunity and the biggest constraint all at the same time. And I think, in any business, whether it be, coaching or MLM or anything like that, we get so obsessed and fixated with the front end stuff, right? Because the front end stuff's really, really important, because if you're not bringing people in, you don't really have a business in that sense. But I also think that we get kind of a little bit wrapped up, whether it be like ego or comparison or whatever it is, about these kind of front end numbers. I made this amount of sales this month and I generated this number per month and acquired these new people this month. And all of that in some sense is great, but simultaneously irrelevant if you're not retaining the people. So my question to these types of business owners is always, well, how many people are you keeping each month? How many are you renewing or retaining each month or each quarter or each year? Because that, to me, is not only probably a more important metric in some sense, but it's the one that also accurately reflects the quality of the work that you do with the people on the inside. That retention number is a byproduct or a reflection of the quality of your delivery. And I just refer to all this stuff as your delivery, as opposed to the marketing and sales. Is what you do with people on the inside is just your delivery. And so I think that we do have a culture. I've certainly seen it in the online coaching space. It wouldn't surprise me if it was in another space, this culture of kind of ego brags and, these fantastic front end numbers. But actually, when you get on the inside of these businesses and start looking at renewal rate, churn rate, client LTV and things like that, that's actually the truer picture. And it often blows my mind how few businesses actually know what their real retention rate is, what their churn rate, what their client lifetime value is. And that's really kind of what I'm about, is helping people get a very, very clear picture of what's going on, and then obviously elevate and refine those numbers in a way that's going to make pretty much any business that relies on churn or retention to, grow exponentially from there.
Yeah, and you and I actually did some spreadsheets, and what we worked out is that you just have to lift your retention a little bit to add a huge exponential component to your growth. So let's say you're bringing in 100 people a month, which would be an extremely low number, But if you can retain 90 of those people, your growth goes vertical. If you can only retain 10 of those people, then your growth flatlines. And so what happens, what I've seen anywhere in the industry, is that the more the churn, the more emphasis there is on recruiting. And the reality is, if your churn is going up, it would make sense to me that all of your focus should be on retention. I don't know what you think.
I mean, yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. But I'm obviously the retention guy, and everything looks like a nail to a hammer. But that said, the when I'm kind of marketing and deliberately like poking business owners to get a response out of them, one of the questions I'll always ask is, why are you trying to get more new clients when you can't keep the ones you've got? And it's just that, and I'm just kind of like try to be a little bit disruptive and polarizing and stuff when I ask that. But at the same time, it's probably one of the single most valid questions if we're talking about this particular topic. Is it's like high churn and low retention, and then thinking, right, I need to just get more new clients or customers. It's just like pouring water into a leaky bucket, watching it all run out, and be like, we better pour more water in there faster so that stops happening. And it's this, I think, it's as much a mindset shift as well as a kind of level of sophistication in the CEO of being saying to this leaky bucket, say, well, it's unsustainable to try to just keep pouring into this if it's full of holes. And again, whether it's a mindset thing or business owners just don't want to think of their business as full of holes, but that analogy is pretty appropriate, because just pouring more people in it shows like a almost like an immaturity, and I don't mean that in a disrespectful or kind of derogatory way to anyone that's experiencing this problem, but it's just looking at the problem from the wrong perspective. And I think that's just because we've been so conditioned through the culture, like I've already says, of just pour more leads and sales in the front end and everything will be okay. But like you said, like a tiny little adjustment in retention by sometimes even 5 or 10% can grow exponentially, because when you reduce that churn and you keep people for longer, the lifetime value goes up. So every client that you then bring in is more valuable to the business. And then it alleviates that stress, frustration, burden to always be pouring people in, and actually frees you up to do more better work on the delivery side with the people that you're actually working with, who then want to stay as a byproduct because there's better work being done. There's more connection and collaboration and probably more success. And so to me, it's such a no-brainer, but I've been on the inside of this for, kind of quite a number of years now. But yeah, that's just like the biggest thing, is just recognizing that yes, you're going to have to always bring new people in, but actually it's just a leaky bucket. And I think I don't know exactly the numbers on the MLM side, but I'd love you to share them to remind me of that spreadsheet that we looked at. But I know in, say, like an online coaching business, is even if you just lift retention 5 or 10%, the business usually has about a 25-30% uplift, just by that tiny, tiny little adjustment. So it really, in some sense, to me, it's such a no-brainer, but there is a couple of kind of barriers, whether it be a cultural thing or a mindset thing, that prevents people really getting this until the penny drops and they go, oh, yeah, that leaky bucket thing makes sense. And the retention thing's just an internal funnel. Right, now I kind of understand. And up until that point, I think a lot of people kind of struggle to wrap their head around it for some reason.
Well, I think, one of the challenges that most companies have is that recruitment is actually quite easy. It's very systemized. The guys have got a presentation. Everybody's out there trying to find new people, so they put the presentation out there. They show the presentation to people. They sell them the dream. It looks very, very exciting, and so people will come into the business. Retention is not sexy, though. Retention is actually quite hard work, because there's so many areas that you have to touch, and to do it well, it's actually quite a big job. And one of the reasons that we're talking is because I know that a lot of our clients have got real problems getting their head around how to retain their people. And so their focus is just on recruiting and very, very little focus on retention. And I just think it's insane, because it is, ultimately the distributor that you've got in your business, that's the goose that lays the golden egg. Because that's the person that's going to bring in the customers, that's the person who's going to bring in new recruits, that's the person who's going to train your people, that's the person who's going to be your word of mouth to the world. And so little effort is put into keeping that person happy, making them successful, training them, getting them to stay with the business, getting their loyalty together. So little effort is made on that. And so much effort is made on recruiting. And you just see, I watch them, they'll pull up their dashboard, and what they're looking at is how many people did we recruit this month? And they're not looking at all at how many people did they lose. I mean, which is, again, why I'm talking to you, because I really believe you have a tremendous amount to offer our clients.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. And yeah, I mean, you're really just kind of echoing in some sense what I've said, or being able to say that kind of what I've said is also what you're seeing and observing. And I think part of it is it does present challenges to put the time, the effort, and the resources into retention. And in some sense, you're right, it's not sexy. It is just sexier to say I signed up 1,000 people this month and I made all this kind of front end money. That's sexy. That's what people want. It's an easy metric for success. Whereas when you're really trying to retain people, you have to dedicate yourself to mastering every step on that client journey, that customer journey. And the other thing as well is that if you're just a sort of business owner that's just there to make money, you're probably not going to give much time to retention, because actually to be excellent at retention is really to say, I'm a people person. It's to really dedicate yourself to developing other people and nurturing other people, helping other people grow, helping other people be successful beyond money or metrics. And not every business owner is that type of person, and that's okay. But actually, that's a big reason why people don't engage with the retention strategies and reducing churn, because whether they're consciously aware of or not, they recognize that actually I'm going to have to spend significant time working with the people and developing them and helping them grow. And not everybody either has the desire or the ability to do that. And I would say that's probably, of the people that really, really crush retention, what they're actually doing is they're obsessing over their customer or client experience. Not just how do you get them results, but what is their journey? What is their experience? How do you help them grow? How do you nurture them? How do you help them win in a very, very meaningful way? And so what they do is they can climb out of their own head, their own needs, their own wants, their own desires for their goals and success. And they can say, well, I wonder what it's like for those people that I'm working with when they join, when they get onboarded, when they kind of start going it alone, when they bump up into challenges. Well, how do they actually feel and what is their experience like? And I think very, very few people are actually able to do that. So a big thing that I do when I'm working with people is to help them get better at coaching people. Because for me, coaching skills is the glue that actually binds so much of this together. And coaching's a skill, and some people are good at it and like it, and some people not so much. But if you can really get great at the coaching aspect of this, everything else starts falling into place, because that's really the glue, if you like, that binds all these other things together.
Well, I found a couple of things which have been, let me not call them frustrating, but not exciting, let's say. One of the challenges that I've had over the years is that a lot of the companies who start multi-level marketing businesses are driven by A-type personalities who are very financially oriented. And their idea is that everybody out there is going to do this because of the money. So they're focused on the compensation plan, they're focused on the money, they bring the people in, and when people don't just make money out of thin air, and because they're not necessarily motivated by money, they drop out. So I found that a lot of these guys, they think that everybody's like them. Everybody wants just to get the money. And for sure, most people come in for the promise of an income. Yeah. Let's just say that. But they don't stay for the promise of an income. The income is not what keeps them in the business. Very often, they are leaving the business not because the money's not there, but they're leaving the business because of all of the other things, the training, the motivation, etc. And so one of the big things that I always have a problem with is trying to educate the owners of the companies, the CEOs, to say, listen, yes, money's important, but it's only 20% of the picture. There's another 80% you're missing completely. And if you are not that people person, like you were mentioning, you have to be a people person, you have to be focused on the thing. If you're not that people person, then you need to get a people person. And if you can't find the people person, then turn your leadership into the people person so that you train your leadership. You get your leadership to train the team. Because if you go into this thing with it's all about money, one of the CEOs of a company said, listen, what we're going to do is we're going to make it a multi-level marketing business. We're going to put some commission there, and then we're going to let the greed drive the team. Well, no. The greed doesn't drive the team. The greed is not what excites people. The greed isn't what it's all about. And if that is your attitude, the chances of you succeeding are zero.
Yeah.
You know, so I think that going back to what you were saying is the idea of having a holistic look at all of these different areas. Now, we've discussed those areas, and I would love you to talk about it. But your product, your compensation, your recognition, your incentives, your social structures in your business, and then training. Those are the 6 sort of main features. So, I mean, maybe you can talk to a bit, those things quickly for me.
Yeah, we're talking about it's not just the money, right? And I think we can make the mistake of thinking, well, if people are making money, they're going to stay. And just for context for people that are maybe newer to me, my background is I've spent a lot of years working in client success and online coaching programs. And a big part of my role was keeping clients engaged, keeping them on track, make sure they're getting results, but most importantly that they're renewing again and again back into the coaching program. And so I as well as kind of helped with the systems and the processes of that, I conducted a lot of renewal calls that are essentially like a renewal sales call. But actually, we kind of quickly figured out that you have to run it more as like a strategic deep dive with an assessment and all that sort of stuff so that you can actually find out what the gaps are and how to offer something viable. So I ended up kind of accidentally stumbling across this model or created this model because as a coach, I'm pretty good at pattern recognition, pretty good at just detecting like there's a reoccurring thing or theme going on here. And then I started kind of tinkering with this model, and over time, it proved itself to be tried and true again and again and again. And so this was really the kind of 4 key reasons that clients will engage and ultimately decide whether they're going to renew and retain with you or not. And that's for the results, the experience, the growth, and the tribe. And so I'll unpack these, but I think they're actually very, very interconnected to those kind of 6 different topics that you were talking about there, Richard, that we'll get into in a few moments. So I'll kind of go through this and unpack it. I'll try not to turn it into the never-ending story, but feel free to interrupt anywhere you want and ask questions or jump in with anything that pops in your head. So like we were saying, that, well, if people are just making money, then they'll stay. And that's actually not true. So one of the big things that always astonished me when I was conducting all of these renewal calls is that, we get on a call with a client. I knew that they were making tons of money and I thought, they're definitely going to renew. So I was almost like, just so almost expectant and a bit blasé on the call. So like, right, so we're going to keep going, right? And they'd be like, no, I think I'm going to leave. And I'd be like, but you're making tons of money. And so they would kind of tell me their story, and I'd say, oh, well, I've heard people say that again and again. So results are important, but what exactly does results mean? Now, yes, there can be a monetary result, and people like that and enjoy it, but actually, you have to think more about what I call defined success or personal success. And that is what is meaningful and valuable to people beyond the money. Because if we all think about our own life, we've all probably told someone to go to hell, even though they could make us lots and lots of money. So we have to think of what exactly does success look like to the people that we're working with. And in order to establish that, we have to know what their core values are and help them use their values to inform their goals. That then means that beyond the money, they have something to aim at that is genuinely meaningful and fulfilling. And if leaders or business owners are not doing that, then even if that person's making a lot of money, they're not going to be fulfilled. And so if someone's like, what exactly do you mean, Ali, or how exactly could I do that? Is let's say I'm working with someone in my network and I'm saying, right, okay, what's your target? And they're like, oh, I want to do 10,000 sales, whatever it is. I say, great. Immediately, I'm going to start asking, well, what does that 10,000 allow you to do? Where does that take you? What does that provide you with? What does that free you up to do? What problems can you solve that? Who else benefits from that? Who does that help you to become? And so when you've got this money, let's say, the money becomes the vehicle for doing something that's more fulfilling. And so if you can then coach the person to connect the money to the other things that are more meaningful and fulfilling, they'll actually be more motivated to make more money, but they'll also be making meaningful progress towards value-based goals. And that's a result beyond the money that people will come for time and time again. But if it's just the money, there's a whole bunch of other reasons why people will give up or quit, even though the money's there. I'm happy to go into experience if you're happy for me to go into experience, but if you've got any
No, go
questions,
for it. Go 100%. Go for it.
good. So this is where it started to get interesting, right? Because as I said, I'm jumping on these calls. I know the person's making money. I can see like their ads and their data and their metrics. I know, what level of profitability they're at. And so I'd be saying to them, okay, so are we going to keep going together? And they'd be like, no, I think I'm going to go. I'm going to leave. I'm going to kind of go my own for a little bit, or I'm going to go join this other program. And I'm like, but hey, you're making money. So why would you do that? And it was this simple. It was that they were successful, but they were not having a positive experience, meaning they were getting the goal, they were getting the result, they were making money, but the experience of what they had to go through and how it felt just wasn't worth it. So it's like, yes, you can help me be successful, but it probably means doing things I don't want to do or working in a way that doesn't feel aligned or congruent or in harmony with my values or personality traits or belief systems. And so, as a result of despite being successful, they were having what they would deem a negative experience. There was negative emotion, negative thoughts and feelings around that. And as a result of that, we don't voluntarily sign up for things that are negative experiences and make us feel bad. If we're wired right anyway, we tend to not voluntarily sign up for those sorts of things. So you could be helping people make boatloads of money, be super, super successful, but if overall it's a more negative experience than positive, they're not going to sign up for that. And I've seen that time and time and time again. And I kind of had to hear that quite a few times before I was like, God, it's the experience, it's not the results. So yes, you have to obsess over results, but when we're talking about reducing churn and retaining clients long term, this is what I was talking about before, is it has to be about the client or customer experience. Because if they're having a great time and loving it, they will keep coming back for that time and time
And
again.
and that's even true if they're not making money. So I've
100%.
seen
Yeah.
people stay in organizations where they're not really working at the organization hard. They're not really making a lot of money, but they are staying because they just love the experience that they're getting.
I 100% have heard that time and time again. I think almost the exact sentence was something to the effect of, I'm not really where I would have liked to have been at this stage, but I am absolutely loving this journey. I just want to keep going. And it demonstrates so perfectly that if people are having a stunning experience, regardless of the results, they will actually sign up for that. I believe almost more so than having the results, but a poor experience. I think that the experience almost outweighs it in some sense.
And
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 so I get
also when they talk to somebody else, what they're going to do is they're going to say, "Hey, wow, I'm having such an amazing time here. You need to come along with me for the journey."
yes.
Um, Whereas it's difficult to say to somebody, "Oh, I'm making money. You need to come along for the journey," because it seems a little bit crass. Whereas if you're having an amazing time, people always want to have an amazing time.
Yeah. So one of the questions I often ask business owners when I kind of get on the inside with this stuff, I say, what does your referrals look like? How many referrals are you getting, or how few are you getting? And if they say we get very, very few referrals, or our referral game is not very good, I know exactly what the experience is like. Because if you go to a restaurant, and even if it's like Michelin starred, or even if the food was incredible, but the service was terrible, you don't tell people to go to that restaurant because you don't want to refer people to something that's a negative experience because that reflects on
100%.
the referee. And so, yeah, like absolutely spot on. So, again, talking about like how do you coach this? Like what sort of things can you be doing to elevate experience? Here's a couple of things to be thinking about is the experience must be congruent with the expectation. So if you tell someone this journey is going to be super successful and easy and quick and all sunshine and rainbows, and you get on the inside and it's really hard, it's very difficult, it's scary, it's uncertain, you're going to get your ass kicked every 5 minutes, there's a lack of congruency. And that disconnect means that the experience doesn't meet the expectation, and so that eradicates trust and things like that. Because generally, the how we feel about something determines on the relationship between the expectation and the
100%.
experience. And so you're better telling people it's going to be really, really hard. One, so that it's not a surprise, and then two, when they're actually successful, they feel really positive because they're like, "Oh wow, this is hard, and I was still successful." But there's another key pillar in that experience formula as well, and it's personalization of the coaching. And again, it's the ability to coach people is if every time, let's say you've got a problem, you've got a constraint in your business, you keep bumping up against something, you're not yet got the skills or the ability to overcome it yourself. And every time you come to me, I just repeat and parrot something that's already in a training or a video module, something you've already learned, but you're just struggling to make it work for you. If I just coach you or respond to you or direct you in a way that feels very just kind of blanket, there is a no personalization in the support. You're actually not going to feel particularly good about that. Whereas if I actually coach you and ask some questions and make even a little bit of effort to truly listen to you, so I can find out what the real problem actually is, and then just even personalize the coaching or the strategy or the guidance just a little bit to fit with your circumstances and maybe even your own goals and values, that personalization in the support is going to massively elevate the experience. And I've seen this time and time and time again in lots of the online coaching programs that I would work in, as you had very passionate and enthusiastic success coaches. They were really good people. They really genuinely cared. They were overall good at what they did. But what they would do is every time a client would jump on a call with a problem, they would parrot exactly what's already in the training, or they would just say these kind of blanket statements that I suppose they believed meant something, but the client was just like, what are you talking about? It feels like you're reading off a script. Like, help me in my circumstances. And on the flip side of that, whenever I spent time actually coaching someone, the gratitude was always there for that level of personalization in the support. So, so, so very important.
Yeah, and then obviously then that falls into that personalization, then falls into the whole concept of growth, because what you're doing is you are focusing on that specific person, their specific needs and wants within the greater, obviously within the greater goals of the company, but helping them to achieve their goals, their dreams, what they want to achieve in the business, by focusing on them as a person, as an individual. And I think very many of the CEOs of companies out there, they focus on their network as a bland group of people. They put them all into one bucket and they say, okay, this is how we're going to motivate them. This is how we're going to drive them. And the reality is that you can't, because some people are driven very hard by competition. If somebody else is competing against them, they're going to do everything to win that competition. Other people don't care less about competition. They are very driven by the feeling that they get through the social cohesion of the network. Or you've got people who are very, let's say, recognition driven. I ran a little company called the Acorn Kids, and we had 10,000 ladies selling children's bath products. And what I found in that group of people, that recognition was the number one driver amongst those people. They just desperately needed some recognition, because a lot of them, moms at home getting no recognition from the children. Husband comes home after a hard day, definitely no recognition there. He wants his food on the table, etc. So they were a group of people that were not being well recognized. And so, as you're saying, customizing the context of your training to that person's specific needs, not as a group, but as an individual, I think is critically important. And I see on your slide there, you have the concept of growth. And that is what it's all about, in my opinion.
Yeah, if you want to keep people engaged, growth is the number one way to do it. So this is what I was talking about, like being a people person and helping develop the people that are in your network that you're working with. So there's three key areas that you can help people grow in. Knowledge base, because obviously when you know better, you can do better, you can make more informed decisions. So certainly knowledge, and then mindset and skill set. So I call it no set, doesn't make any sense, but knowledge base, mindset, and skill set. And when you help somebody grow, that's one of the number one things that turns on all of their positive emotional circuitry. They're going to get more dopamine, they're going to get more serotonin, they're going to get all of those feel good chemicals that boost engagement, that boost, not only boost, but sustain motivation in a healthy, positive way. Because that's when people really come alive. Now, when it can't just be random growth. Because if I come and try and help you grow in a way that you don't actually want to grow, that's actually going to be very stressful for you. It might even conflict with some of your beliefs or values. So the secret is, and this kind of comes back to the results in some sense, and that's what I mean by this stuff's really an ecosystem, is if you help people grow in the direction of their core value-based goals, that will light them up. You will never lose that person if they are growing in a meaningful direction because they're going to be so full of that positive emotion. Similarly, if they are not growing, that's when that a lot of negative emotion is going to creep in as well and cause them to want to disengage or quit or opt out. So absolute growth so important. And then while I'm going, I'll just jump into tribe there. Community. We are a pack animal. That recognition, when I hear it, is we live in these kind of complex sort of social hierarchies, and we all are sort of jostling to find our place in that hierarchy. Not everybody wants to be at the top of the hierarchy. It's not always a power struggle. It's usually more about competence than anything else. But if you connect people to a really positive, supportive community with a shared vision, with complementary values, and everybody's collectively on that journey, that is going to create an incredible amount of stickiness. I always used to say in the coaching space that they'll come for the coaching, but they'll stay for the community. And another really
100%.
positive now, another really positive thing, when you've got your community and tribe really dialed in some sense, it self-regulates, meaning newer people that are coming in will look at the more established, more longer-term members, and they will use that as a guide of kind of how to act right. And simultaneously, if somebody comes in, if they have a wobble, if they have a freak out, a meltdown, maybe they're being negative, or they're being feeling defeated, other people in that community can step in and say, hey, I know exactly how you feel. I was exactly there not too long ago, but this is what I did to overcome it. I'm happy to help. And it's self-regulating in a very positive and powerful way, which just alleviates a little bit of the burden of that responsibility from leadership. And so that stickiness can be really, really created with the community. And when you give people the role or the position or the recognition within that community that they crave, that is going to really make them feel at home in a really rewarding way.
Yeah, look, and I call tribe social, but that's exactly what it is. It's
Yeah.
creating some mechanisms in your business that make people belong. They feel like they belong to something bigger than themselves. They feel like they belong to something good and wonderful, and that, as you say, are giving them that dopamine hit. And we've seen it. We had clients in my company who would come to the meeting and arrive 20 minutes before it started and leave 20 or 30 minutes after it was finished. They were the first to come, the last to leave, and it's just because they wanted that sense of belonging within the organization. And for me, that's quite an exciting part of it, this whole tribe concept.
Yeah, and I deliberately use the word tribe as opposed to just community. Obviously, when I'm speaking, I use the word community, but on this model, it's deliberately tribe because I'm really looking to tap into that deep, visceral like sense of identity and belonging. Really trying to connect because we're all so tribal. I mean, if you look at everything from just the way the world is just now to even the recreational activities that people do, it's CrossFit or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or, and what's those like big long endurance runs now, like people get into these activities, but actually they're so into it and they have such a strong culture that whether they want to admit it or not, they are now in a tribe. And it is tribal and territorial. And it can be very protective and defensive and things like that. So, yeah, I deliberately use the term tribe because it's about more than just the community. It's all of that deep, deep stuff that's been at the very heart of our programming for millennia. So, yeah.
And so your wheel of fortune here, results, just to recap, which is obviously helping people get results. The experience, that's the overall experience with the whole company, helping people grow and then helping them to develop into a cohesive social tribe, let's say, within the company. And if we manage to achieve that, then your churn rate is going to go way down. And so what I'd like to do quickly is I've got a spreadsheet here that you and I discussed, and I just want to just show the impact of retention on how this all works. So I think can you see my numbers here?
I can.
So we're just going to go for a small network. We're going to say you got 500 active people here. You can see my. Can you see my mouse? Right. So you got 500 active people over here. We'll just say that every person, you got one subscription per person. We'll just do it on a subscription base and small monthly sales. And the subscription fee, let's just say the monthly sales, about $200 a month. We can change these numbers, but it just give you an idea. Now, the average growth component within an MLM business is 1.25. So that's for every person, they recruit on average 1.25 people in their lifetime. That's for all time, which is low, but it's because one person will recruit 10 and 9 people will recruit very little or none. So that's kind of where that number comes from. Attrition, though, is scary because I've had a look across the board on all, and we've got data going back 25 years. And what we found is that attrition runs at between 10 and 15%. So it sounds like 15%, oh, that's not bad, but that's per month. So I've got this growth matrix. So let's say you got 500 people in January. That attrition means that by the time you get to December, you've only got 84 of those 500 people left. So that's attrition.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's because people come in and they churn out. And that's a pretty accurate picture. But because you are building your business at a 1.25 recruits per person, the following month, your 425 people who are left, who didn't go out, are suddenly sitting at 503. So you've gone from 500 to 956, and you think, okay, well, that's great. But you'll have a look, of that 531 people, 11 months later, you've only got 105 of them left, and so on and so forth. And so at the end of the year, you're growing. You've gone from 500 people to 4,536 people. That's what it is over there. So there's growth. So the CEO sits down with his charts and he sees growth. And he thinks, well, we're doing well. Okay. And if you have a look at the numbers here based on those, he starts off doing $59,000 in the beginning of the year. And by the end of the year, he's doing $539,000 a month. And he thinks, wow, that's very cool. But let me just show you what happens if you change the retention. So let's say you go from 15%, let's say you go to 7%. So we improve the retention quite radically. At the end of the year, you haven't changed how many people you're recruiting at all. Not a single person extra are you recruiting, but your retention has gone up. You've improved your retention by 50%. At the end of the year, suddenly you've gone from 500 people to 12,000 people. Of that 500 people you signed up in the beginning, you've now got 225 people. So if you have a look at this row, you can see that your retention is not nearly where it was. It's not nearly as bad as it was. You got 12,000 people, but look at the difference it makes to your income. Now you've gone from 59,000, instead of going to 500,000, you're now on 1.5 million. So just by doubling your retention rate, saying improving your retention rate, or let's say halving your attrition from 15 to 7, you suddenly are tripling your income. So the thing is that this spreadsheet highlights in real terms the importance of maintaining your people, of retaining them, and of not just focusing on, because you can see, okay, we've gone from whatever to 500,000 in turnover, from 60,000 to 500,000 in turnover. That is definitely an increase. You could pat yourself in the back and feel good. But if you were able to just improve your retention, you go from 500,000 to 1.5 million. So you triple your growth. And for me, it just blows my mind that people aren't putting all of the effort into retention rather than putting all of their effort into recruiting. Because these guys are recruiting and the industry standard is 1.25. Now, just to give this more clarity, when I was running Acorn Kids back in the day, we went on a massive drive. I thought, if I can double my turnover, my number of people, I'd double my turnover, which we duly did. We doubled our people we doubled our turnover, and it was a bell curve. So this thing went up, and then because we were not retaining people properly, we had this bell curve. So if you plotted over a year, if you plotted a line, it was very flat because we had this little bump because we were focused on recruiting. But in actual fact, the growth line was very flat. Whereas once you start focusing, and to be honest with you, I didn't focus on retention like I should have. But once you focus on retention, that does change the trajectory. You get this exponential component to your growth.
Yeah. Well, look, the proof's in the pudding with this, right? This is why, like, if I do a sales call with someone, I just say to them, we're just going to do an assessment. I'm going to show you the numbers. And all I say is, are you the sort of person that can make sense of those numbers? Because if those numbers don't scream off the page and make this an absolute no-brainer for you, like if you can't see that, then we've got no business doing business. But because it just speaks for itself. And, it's if you've got that level of churn that you shared on the spreadsheet, is like your business is on fire. It's not like retention at that level or churn at that level. Like having retention isn't a nice to have, or I'll do that a bit more of that sometime. It's that your business is on fire, and
100%.
over the appropriate time frame, your business goes to zero because you're just leaking and hemorrhaging people out your business. And so, yeah, it's always kind of both amusing and frightening to me that more people don't obsess over it. And also, on like maybe a slightly different angle, is I think retention is now more important than ever because leads, prospects out in the marketplace are more aware, they're more sophisticated, they're more knowledgeable, they're more accustomed to being sold to, they've got more options. And so if you want to absolutely crush it this year and every other year, like it is absolutely about attrition because people have a near infinite amount of opportunity and possibility for making money or pursuing goals or whatever it is. There's so much opportunity and options out there that, if you've put the time, the effort, and the budget into acquiring someone, and your attrition rate is that, like, you are absolutely on fire. And so solving it isn't just like a no-brainer, but it should be an absolute non-negotiable for business owners.
And look, I say to my clients, look, if you could take your business, instead of going from 60,000 to 500,000, because that trajectory obfuscates what the attrition is doing to your business because you're seeing growth. And I say to my clients, listen, if you could get somebody in here that could change your 12-month projection from 500,000 to 1.5 million, what would that be worth to you? And the issue is here, Ali, is that the value that you add to specifically our industry is immeasurable. Because once you can turn that experience on, once you can help grow those team members, once you can turn them into a tribe, then what you do is you create a business that literally will go vertical very quickly, because this is an exponential business. Once you get it all right, the business goes vertical. You go and have a look at companies like Amway, which I don't know their latest number. A couple of years ago, they were doing $11 billion a year. Now, why do they do the 11 billion? Because those guys know how to retain their people. They know how to train them, motivate them, excite them, recognize them, incentivize them. They really do know how to do that in a big way. And that's why they get to an $11 billion a year turnover. And so I think that for our clients, as we come into land on this first session, but our clients really need to reach out to you, even if it's just to talk to you and say, listen, how can we make something happen? Because you literally can change their bottom line. I mean, more than anybody else that we work with in our companies and in our organizations and with our clients, you can change the bottom line for them over time. Yep. So can you just do me a favor? Give me your email address, your LinkedIn, whatever you want to give out here that people can get hold of you. I'll also put it up on the screen afterwards, and let's get some people talking to you, because I think we can change their lives.
Yeah, well, I'd like to think so. LinkedIn, Ali Temple, that's ALI for Ali Temple. Then you can follow me on Instagram. I've got a handle Client Success Lab. That's Client Success Lab on Instagram. When I remember, I sometimes put pretty good content up there. And then email address, Ali Temple Coaching at gmail.com. And anyone is welcome to reach out anytime. And one of the things that's always really important for me to say is that like people can talk to me secure knowing it's not going to be a pitch fest because one, my number one priority is can I actually help you? Hence I always do an assessment with people. And number two is do I want to help you? And that's going to sound a little bit ridiculous is that the reason that I really love the retention stuff is because I'm a coach. I genuinely love coaching people. I really help. I love helping people grow into their goals. Yes, be successful. Yes, make tons of money. I really care about the client journey and experience. And so I don't just work with anyone willy-nilly. Like even recently someone was trying to pay me to sign up and I says, I don't really think this is a fit. I don't really feel the alignment there, which is really me saying, I don't know if I want to spend my time and energy pouring into you if we're not on the same page in terms of values and stuff like that. And retention for me is so great because I am a people person. I love helping people grow. But actually, when you retain people and work with them longer term, I absolutely believe that you get to do more of your best work because you know the person, you've got trust, you've got respect, like you know their values, their belief systems, like you're aligned in the vision, the thing that you care about and what you want to see. And yeah, you can make them boatloads of money, but that's actually a skiing trip for their kids or something like that that enriches their quality of life. So I am all about the people. So anyone that's interested in having conversations with me, we meet, we do an assessment. I'll say, I think we can improve things by this amount. Usually that's a no-brainer amount. And then if I feel aligned to that person, if it's someone that I would enjoy working with, then I would make an offer. But I don't just kind of jump in bed with anyone sort of thing, for want of a better expression.
Fair enough.
Yeah, yeah.
Cool. Ali, thank you very much. This is the part of a six-part series. So we're going to be handling products and incentive and recognition and commissions and building tribe over the next few weeks. So for those of you who are interested, please follow us on this particular session. Make sure you subscribe, click that like button. Help us to get the algorithms working in our direction. And I look forward to chatting with you about this over the next few weeks. And I look forward to seeing what happens on this front.
Yeah, likewise, Richard. Thanks very much. Always enjoy our time together.
Thanks very much, Ali. Have a great day, man.
You too.